The High Arbiter's blood pooled on the white tiles of the council floor as her secure folder scattered technical diagrams of the galaxy's most terrifying weapons into the air above her cooling body. In the deafening silence of the chamber, a single particle beam still hissed where it had carved through her chest. Would you dare to look at the blueprints that cost a world its soul? Subscribe to see what secrets remain buried in the ashes, and let's find out if the price of peace was worth the weight of this blood. 6 days earlier, Alara had spent the morning fussing over the latch of her black leather briefcase, a mundane annoyance that seemed trivial compared to the fate of the Soul Collective. The Archminister's aide, a spindly creature named Vale with iridescent scales and 4 eyes that never seemed to blink at the same time, watched her from the doorway of the guest spire. Vale found the human's attachment to the primitive hide container fascinating. She carried it everywhere, as if the physical weight of the datapad inside gave her words more gravity. The Hegemony of Stars was a place of soaring crystalline arches and a suffocating sense of its own history. As Vale escorted the High Arbiter toward the Great Tribunal, he noticed the way she paused to touch the smooth surface of the warp gate blueprints etched into the hallway walls. The humans had built those gates. They had bled to stop the necrotic blight while the Hegemony castes debated the cost of intervention. Yet, as they passed the higher caste officials, the shimmering Xylos and the plated Draxian warriors, Vale heard the whispered scoffs. They called her a useful pet. They spoke of the humans as laborers who had simply found the right tools by accident. During the preliminary hearings, Alara stood before the Archminister, her expression a mask of diplomatic patience. Vale stood behind the record-keeper's podium, his sensors picking up the elevated heart rate of the human woman, though her voice remained steady. She spoke of sovereignty and the right of the Soul Collective to stand as equals. In the shadows of the upper mezzanine, Vale caught sight of Archminister Xylo leaning close to Warlord Drax. Their body language was a jagged contrast to the decorum of the room. Shoulders tight, eyes fixed on the High Arbiter with a predatory focus that had nothing to do with law. Subscribe for more chronicles from the edge of the galaxy. The afternoon sun of the Hegemony capital caught the brass corners of Alara's briefcase as she set it on the mahogany table. She looked at Vale and offered a small, tired smile, the kind of smile a teacher gives a student who hasn't quite grasped the lesson yet. The Great Tribunal reconvened under a sky the color of a bruised plum. Vale watched from the wings as Alara Vance approached the central dais, her black leather briefcase clutched in a white-knuckled grip. She didn't look like a petitioner anymore. There was a sharpness to her eyes that made the iridescent scales on Vale's neck prickle. She began to speak, but it wasn't a plea. It was a revelation. She laid the briefcase flat, the click of the latches echoing like a gunshot. As she projected the schematics, not of warp gates but of logic engines that could rewrite the laws of physics, the mockery in the room died. Xylo's 4 eyes narrowed, and Drax's hand drifted toward his sidearm. The air in the chamber grew heavy with the sudden, terrifying realization that the useful pets had been holding the leash the entire time. Then the world shattered, and now, in the tribunal hall, under the silence of 300 species, she still hadn't moved from where the particle beam had dropped her. The diagrams of the Soul Collective's true power flickered in the air above her, cold and blue. Archminister Xylo stepped over her body, his voice booming as he declared the humans a rogue threat, a cancer to be purged. He signaled the fleet to glass the Sol system before the beast could fully wake. But the beast was already screaming. High above the capital, the sky didn't just darken. It tore. Vale watched the monitors as 20,000 Terran signatures blinked into existence. Ships that didn't use warp gates, but simply appeared where they chose to be. These were not the bulky freighters the Hegemony knew. They were jagged, black needles of pure intent, guided by AI minds that thought in nanoseconds. The Hegemony Armada, the pride of 1,000 years, began to vanish from the tactical displays, not in explosions, but in systematic erasures. In the chaos, a human shadow detached itself from the pillars behind the High Council. It moved with a terrifying, silent fluidity that bypassed every shield Vale had helped calibrate. The agent didn't use a gun. They used a small, pressurized vial, the same necrotic strain Xylo had perfected in his secret labs. Before Xylo could even draw a breath to scream, the agent had pressed the delivery system against his shimmering skin. The transition was absolute. The hegemony didn't just lose, they were dismantled. Weeks later, Vale stood on the observation deck of the New Alara station, looking out at the sprawling shipyards where human and alien worked side by side, though the power dynamic had shifted forever. The air smelled of ozone and fresh paint. He looked down at the object sitting on the pedestal in the center of the memorial hall. The black leather briefcase was open, its leather scuffed and its handle worn from Alara's grip. It no longer held blueprints for peace or secrets of war. It held the new constitution of the Federation, a document that began with the equality the hegemony had refused to give. Vale reached out, touching the cold brass latch, wondering if the humans had always known it would end this way, or if they had truly hoped the briefcase would never have to stay open. The leather was silent, a hollow shell of a dream that had been forced to grow teeth. What do you think remains in the shadows of a peace built on such a terrifying display of force? Subscribe to witness the dawn of the next age tomorrow.